aren't public speakers, can I join your group? I know you've had great speakers over the last year or so. Well, you always do here. Some great folks that like to roam around. I'm going to stay behind the podium here a little bit and prop myself up. Today is squat day at the gym, so I want to conserve all my energy as I can. Max Gordichuk, who would just introduce himself, protege of mine, being modest, he's a former pro hockey player from Canada and has moved here, and we're excited to have him joining the industry. So if you want to get an autograph from Max afterwards, I'm sure he'll stay by and take care of that for you. Also, I want to welcome some of the Costa Pacific alums that are here. I see a few around. If you're a Costa Pacific alum, thank you for being here. And please don't reveal any of the lies that I'm going to tell today, Bob. So what I've got up here is, Dave asked me a while back, or Nancy, I'm not sure who conned me into doing this, asked me to kind of tell a tale or two. And so I just give you a little bit of background. I didn't grow up in the home building business. My folks were in iron and steel. My mother ironed and my dad stole, but no, it's not true. But that was, he actually worked for Bethlehem Steel down in Southern California. I grew up down there and went to school at the University of California, Davis, and upon graduation in physical education, stayed to coach there for a year, and then moved on to San Clemente High School down in Southern California and coached there for a year before moving back into the college ranks, where I coached both in Colorado and then finally at Boise State University. And as well as at Boise State that I got into the real estate development business. Over that period of time, I've worked for public companies. I've worked with public companies. We started our own company back in 1990. It was a spin-off of Columbia Willamette Development Company, which was a subsidiary of Portland General Electric. And we were building a project called Murray Hill at the time. And we ended up finishing up a good part of Murray Hill as Costa Pacific Homes, and then got involved with Pac Trust, Pacific Realty Trust, who had a big industrial, who's a big industrial developer and had quite a bit of land out in Hillsboro, adjacent to the then new Ronler Acres site for Intel. And their land was zoned industrial, and when it was announced by Metro and TriMet that the new light rail would be extended out there, and that their land would be rezoned to something called station area residential, which meant high density, pedestrian friendly, transit oriented, mixed use development. At that time, this is in the mid 90s, nobody even knew what that was, including the city of Hillsboro planners. So they went out looking for a developer to work with, and ultimately selected us. We sloshed our way through, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, to develop a Renko station there, and then ultimately to move from Renko station to Villebois down in Wilsonville, which we're currently and continuing to develop. I currently, including working with to sell land in Villebois and continue to develop that out and work with the builders who are there now. I'm working with Capacity Commercial Group downtown Portland as a land broker, and just enjoying the heck out of helping other people solve land issues as well. I also started 3.5 years ago a little private specialty gym over in Southeast Portland, and I'll tell you more about that too. So what I wanted to do is take kind of my experiences early on in my career, my first career as a college football coach, and more recently in the world of powerlifting, and kind of share with you some anecdotes of things that I've picked up from those areas and how they've sort of shaped my life, and how we've applied some of those things to developing two of America's #1 master plan communities. In fact, the only two master plan communities in the Northwest who have ever won that award by NHB, both Orenco Station in 1999 and Villebois in 2009. So, you may have been out and seen this scene before. This is sort of the centerfold picture for Orenco Station. Mixed-use development, transit-oriented, pedestrian-friendly, higher density, but a pretty cool place. And then Villebois, as I mentioned, a new urban village which replaced what could have been a women's prison at the site of the former state mental hospital. And we came in with a little bit different vision, and now it's certainly the most popular master plan in Portland right now. So what lessons have we taken from coaching? Some of these things may seem obvious to you. We talk about team building, and you've heard speakers talk about team building and all that. I mean, back when I was a young coach, there was a fellow that coached the Ohio State Buckeyes, been around for years, no longer around. His name was Woody Hayes. And he said, you win with people. And I always wondered what he meant by that. Obviously, you have to have people, but he meant you win with people who are winners. And you win with people by surrounding yourself with people who are winners. Henry Ford said the same thing. He said, in a different way, he said, I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. I just have to have people in the room that are smarter than me that work for me. So what I've focused on over the years is surrounding myself with great people like Bob and Rose and Judy Adler and any number of current Neil and Chris and Andy and Dave and Scott, and just great people that have worked with me over the years. And I encourage you in your jobs today, whether you're in trade or a vendor or a builder, that you surround yourself with good people and you learn from good people. It's worked for me. Next thing is take what the defense gives you. Now you hear that coaches spend a great deal of time studying their opponents, film study. I can assure you that's accurate. When I was at Boise State, a typical day in the office at 7 a.m., got home, left the office about 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, got home maybe four or 5 hours of sleep, and back up the next day. It was 18-hour days every day. Thursday nights we got off about 8 o'clock, and that was the nights that we got to spend with the family. Friday, if we were playing at home, we were out scouting high school games. If we were traveling, we were on the road. And it started all over again on Sunday mornings. You spend a lot of time doing that, and that trained me. When I first got in the real estate business, I didn't know anything about it, never even taken a business class in school, but I just had a work ethic that was different than everybody else. I mean, there weren't any realtors in Boise, Idaho at the time that I got into the business that were working 18 hours a day, I guarantee you. And so it was fun. Things just happened, and it worked. I try not to work 18 hours a day anymore, but it still is a good thing to think about how hard one needs to work. And when I say take what the defense gives you, it's like, find the path that is somewhat of least resistance, and work with that. A lot of people try to swim upstream. They try to do something that's harder. I recall when we started planning Orenco Station, and we had fights with Metro, we still do, about choices and density and all that. But back in 1995, I made the decision that I could spend a whole lot of time and money, and I don't have either, fighting the requirements to build a high-density, transit-oriented, mixed-use development on this land, or I could figure out a way to make that work. How could I do higher density product and make it feel cool, make it feel like people wanted to be there? So we we traveled around, we looked for things, and that we got to, if we go to the next point on scouting, you know, I said, find what the best examples are. And in football, when I was at the University of Northern Colorado, we traveled to the University of Nebraska in the spring and spent time with a coach by the name of Bob Devaney and his staff. Back then, Nebraska was always a perennial top 5 football team. And Bob Devaney is one of the gods of coaching. And we'd go and they would allow us to come to their spring practices and learn from them. I also got a chance to visit with the Dallas Cowboys when I was at Boise State, and with John Ralston when he was at Denver Broncos and that staff. And we learned about it. We went to the best places, the people that knew more than what we knew. And the same thing happened when we were scouting out Orenco Station. We traveled all over the country, far and wide, back to Washington, D.C. and parts of Maryland, and looking for communities that had a traditional feel, that were pedestrian friendly. And really there was nothing new going on at the time. What we found was that when we visited places like Georgetown, the places that were really, really cool, whose values held, were those old neighborhoods that were built prior to World War II, before we got focused on the automobile in the post-World War II era. So there were a few garages in these neighborhoods, and if they were on alleys. And they were a mix of uses going on. There were different things that were happening. There were townhomes, and there were single-family homes, and there was a little grocery store up on the corner. Some of you with a little bit of gray hair in your head remember that you could actually ride your bike up to the grocery store and get a quart of milk for your mom and feel safe. And those were the neighborhoods that were then and still are today the cool places. So we scouted those out. We came back here to see places like Laurelhurst and Ladd's Addition, where we said, these places have sustained and they're cool. And why couldn't you try to create a place like that today and not be a Me Too builder that does what everybody else is doing? So that's what we set about to do, and we had to scout a lot to do that. When I say create a winner, obviously that seems so trite. Yeah, everybody would like to create a winner. But what we did and the stature we took, and by the way, if you haven't read Purple Cow by Seth Godin, write that down. It's a great book. It's a quick read, but Seth is a great teacher and trainer, and talks about how to transform your business by being remarkable. And what we decided to create a winner, we had to be remarkable. We had to be separate. We were never a big company. We've always been a smaller group by comparison to the other builders and developers in the area, and certainly in the country. But we've always thought of ourselves as being bigger and having good ideas. So we took that notion of, if you think about football again, back in the early days of football, guys were always trying to come up with something new, and they did. They came up with like the wishbone, and that was remarkable at that time. No one was doing that. Then there was the run and shoot that Portland State ran, and no one was doing that, and everyone thought that was a remarkable thing, and they had great success. And even today, over at the University of Oregon, where Chip Kelly introduced the spread option and the phenomenal things that are going on, people are just amazed. It's a remarkable thing that they did. And you have to continue to remake remarkability, because once you do it the first time, it's no longer remarkable. So you have to keep working on that. And that's part of what it takes to create a winner. Recruiting is all about sales. And I remember when I first got to Boise State, I was responsible for recruiting Southern California. And the head coach, Jim Kreiner, was a driver. He had just moved there to Boise State and taken the head job from UCLA. And I was down at L.A. Harbor Junior High or Junior College, recruiting a kid by the name of Lorenzo Buckner. He was an offensive tackle. He was 6'4", 3 something, and I went to the school to meet with him in the pre-designated time, and went to the coach there, and Lorenzo wasn't around. I asked Coach, well, he's supposed to meet me here. He said, well, I don't know. I said, well, how do I find him? He goes, I don't know, go to his house. So L.A. Harbor is a long way from Hollywood, where the kid lived in an apartment. And so I went there, drove all the way up there, and got to his apartment house, and it had a locked gate in front. Couldn't get in. So I hung out and just waited until 2 ladies of the night happened to walk out, and I snuck in the door and found his apartment, knocked on the door, and no answer. And so I went, and I'm kind of desperate because Kreiner keeps calling me and telling me, you better get this kid. And we were going hard against San Jose State for his services. And so I went to the managers, knocked on the manager's door, and told my sad story. And I said, could you just look in his apartment and just see if his stuff's still there? I won't even go in. Just tell me that his stuff's there, because if his stuff's gone, then I'm in trouble. So they peeked in. They go, yeah, his stuff's here. So I waited around till finally 11 o'clock at night. Literally, I just hung around in the courtyard waiting, because I knew how important this was to the program and selling this kid on coming to Boise State. So he finally shows up, and just like nothing was wrong. Coach, how you doing? It's good to see you. And so the next morning, we met for breakfast, and then I had to meet with his sister there, who at the time was the road manager for Donna Summers. That's how far back this goes. But so we're sitting in his sister's apartment that evening. It's about 6 o'clock, and celebrating that he's going to come to Boise State, and promising her what a good, how well we're going to take care of this young man. And the phone rings, and it's Lynn Stiles, the head coach of San Jose, and Rennie. We called him, his name is Lorenzo, but it's short for Rennie. Rennie was his nickname. So he's on the phone, and I'm listening in, and Stiles is talking about how many times more they're going to be on TV than we are, and he's going to get more exposure and this and that. And I'm like holding his hand and saying, come on, Rennie, don't change your mind now. And so I get to the chase. He finally tells Lynn, no, he's going to Boise State. We celebrate. I call Coach and say, Coach, Rennie's coming. He says, when? I said, well, we'll head up there tomorrow. He goes, no, you'll start heading up there tonight. I go, what, Coach? It's like 6 o'clock at night here, and we got to get a trailer and all this stuff. And he goes, they have U-Hauls places that are open late. Find one. And so I'm out there trying to find a U-Haul place. We did. We found this deal. We had to hitch it up and get a hitch to attach to his 62 Chevelle that had a bench seat in the front, and he, as a 350-pounder, it was crushed. And so when I got in the front seat of the thing with the U-Haul on the back, I couldn't see over the dash. And we start driving up 395 at 9 o'clock at night, and that's when the times of the gas shortages too. We get up to about Lone Pine, which is a little sleepy town, if any of you know, on 395. We're out of gas. Not literally, but almost. If we kept going any far, we run out. We get off, there's no gas stations open. So I pull into this little motel, and Rennie's sitting in the front seat, and big white eyes are showing through the dashboard, and I'm through the windshield, and I go inside and said, well, we need a couple rooms. He said, well, we only have one. I said, okay, does it have 2 beds? See, yeah, it has 2 beds. Okay, and I had to wake this guy up. It was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So, that literally was the sacrifice to make this sale. I got him to Boise State the next morning, or the next evening, actually, came into a basketball game. The coach says, have you unloaded the stuff yet? I go, no, Coach, I'm tired. He says, get over and unload the trailer and take the trailer back so that he can't change his mind and leave. So that's what I did. So Rennie Buckner became a Bronco and ultimately a first-team player, all-conference player for us. But I transferred that. When I got back to, or got into home building and development, we had our sales team. You know, we always said nothing happens till something sells. It really doesn't matter. I mean, if you aren't selling, you're not building. You're not manufacturing. If you're manufacturing, you aren't selling, you're nuts, and you're going to be in trouble. And we all know that. So we focus on sales, and we really work with our salespeople to be the best they can be at selling. So when I say practice like you play, again, I'll refer to the University of Oregon. You know, you hear about how fast they play and how many plays they run in a game and all that. Well, they even practice faster than they do in games. And I can tell you as a coach, when we had a crummy week of practice, if we were sluggish, if we were missing assignments, I knew that we weren't going to have a good game because we were going to play exactly the way we practiced all that week. And so with our salespeople and with our entitlement officers and with our acquisition officers, we role played. And people don't like to do it. Max, ring. I've been teaching Max about role playing. It's like awkward. You feel like, well, really, do I have to do that? I have to answer? I mean, I have to pretend like I'm actually talking to somebody? Yeah, we do, because you're going to be put in front of somebody, and you want to be able to practice it and be prepared to do that. So I encourage all of you, if you're a salesperson, practice your presentation. If you're an acquisition officer and you're going to meet with a landowner, practice what you're going to say. Anticipate their objections and be prepared to overcome those objections. Same thing with if you're an entitlement officer and you're working with the jurisdiction. Anticipate how you're going to present to them. Understand what they need and want and figure out how to present it to them. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to practice like you play. Now, mental imaging. When I was at the University of Northern Colorado and coaching there, I was also working on my doctorate in, it was an upgrade from physical education to psychological kinesiology, which is the study of human movement and how one learns a motor skill. And my thesis was on, or dissertation was on the acquisition of mental imaging and the acquisition of fine motor skill. And what we showed and what has been shown in the literature over time is that if you picture yourself in your mind doing something, whether it's if it's a swing or it's a weight training exercise, anything you can, if you sit in your quietly in a chair and close your eyes and picture yourself doing it, what's interesting is that the muscles in your body are actually being activated and firing exactly as you're thinking about them. And studies have shown with mental imaging, you can learn almost as much as you can by physically doing it. And you can only physically practice something so many times a day or so many times a week. But you can mentally practice it a lot more than that. And so by mentally practicing and imagining and imaging yourself doing that kind of thing over and over and over again, and picture yourself doing it correctly, and picture yourself being successful, you will be successful. And you will be able to perform at a much higher level. Practice yourself, imagine yourself, see yourself in your mind's eye doing it exactly the way you want it to be done, and it'll happen. And I guarantee you it does. And it works in football, it works in every sport, golf, tennis, marriage, that's kind of a sport. I know it works in weight training as well. So being creative, well, let me tell you about one thing about mental imaging. Back in 1997 or 8, one of those 2 years, we were getting ready to do our grand opening for Orenco Station. We actually opened our models up in October of, I think it was 97, it might have been 96, but whatever, a year later, we just did a soft opening. We delayed having a grand opening until the following year because there was the following fall that the light rail was going to open, and we wanted to make a big deal about that. And so I was back in Washington, D.C. Doing some lobbying, and I was at Earl Blumenauer's office and showed him the brochure for Renko Station. He said, are there people actually living here? I go, yeah, we're building that project right now. He said, this is a killer. He says, I'm going to send this over to the vice president's office. So I said, okay. So he sent it to the vice president's office. He called me a couple weeks later and said, the vice president is really interested in this project, because at the time, vice president was Al Gore. And besides creating the internet, he also had created new urbanism. And so it was like a natural for him. And so about 2 weeks, 6 months later, about 2 weeks before our grand opening, I get a call from my partners at Pac Trust, and all three of them are on the phone at the Times conference call. And my secretary answered and said, the guys are on the phone for you. I go, shh, what did I do now? I mean, what's going on? They said, so she goes, I don't know, get on the phone. So here they are, they're saying, Rudy, you gotta be careful what you wish for. I go, what are you talking about? He said, we got a call from the White House. I'm thinking, who bought a White House at a Renko Station? I'm thinking, do I have an unhappy customer that bought a White House? We didn't even have White Houses. They go, no, the White House, in Washington, D.C. I go, well, what? He said, well, the vice president's coming to our grand opening. I go, holy crap. So minute imaging works. So I said, quickly I just said, well, I better hurry up and get out there and warn the guys. It's too late, the Secret Service is already there. So we did have, I don't care what your politics are, and I'm more conservative than anything, but to have the Vice President of the United States at your grand opening is pretty cool, I'll tell you. So be creative on offense. Now, I've always been on the offensive side of the ball, and I've always been a guy that's like, let's just run 5 deep and go with five protecting and let it all hang out. I've always been aggressive, if you will, and I've applied that to business too. And we have been pretty creative. We've thought outside the box, and I think one of the things that we've done well is that we include everybody that's on our team. And so if you have a great team, and make sure they're all included when you're doing things. So I love the idea of brainstorming and working together with a group. And if you all sat around here this afternoon and spent 4 hours with all your experience, you guys could come, literally, with all the information you have, you guys could come up with the next great thing if you would spend the time to do it, because all of your energy was together and it's all focused on something. You could come up with the next great thing. I rarely came up with anything that was great on my own. In fact, I'll tell you some stories about what the results were when I did that. But we did some fun things. When we opened up Renko Station pre-sales right on Cornell there, just a wide open field, and we stuck a trailer out there for our construction and pre-sales people, and it's just a trailer, it's kind of bad. So we went to Portland and came up with the idea. We went to Portland Opera. And do you remember that, Bob? Went to Portland Opera, and they created a stage, if you will, or what would you call it, a backdrop kind of a deal, but it was the front drop of this trailer. And it was a street scene of what this community was going to look like, complete with townhomes. And the actual door is kind of 3/4 size, but it was the door to the townhome led into the trailer, and we had a back door and this whole thing, and we had to prop it up because it was huge. It was huge. It's like a billboard. So we had to have all this wind shear stuff going on, but it caused traffic accidents on Cornell because everyone stopped to see that. They could not believe how cool that was. And it got so much attention and drew people right in. We created a street and a curb and street lamps and the whole thing to go with that. That was a fun deal that came out of brainstorming and thinking and being creative. We were never that big of a company, and we did our fair share of advertising the Oregonian, but it got to the point where we're competing so much with so much stuff in the ads in the newspaper that you kind of got lost in it. And it was then that the internet, this is mid-90s, when websites were still just now getting really going, and So we developed a great website for Orenco Station. In fact, it won a national award. And we thought people can find out so much about Orenco Station. We just get them to go to our website. So we went into the Oregonian with, on every page of the Oregonian real estate section, we would put a 2-column, 2-inch black and white Adler, is that big, with a cute little saying about Orenco, and all it said was www.orencostation.com. And we drove people. It was a creative way to spend less money and drive more people to our website and increase traffic. And I've never seen anybody else do that since, but it was very effective. It seems like it'd be even more effective today because the more people are on the internet. Another thing that we did that was really creative, I had my team, we worked for a couple months on putting this together, but back when the state and the city of Wilsonville were looking to find a developer to acquire the state land, they went on a national search. They actually came out to Orenco Station, and what they really wanted was kind of the son of Orenco. And but they had to go, because the state owned it, they had to do a national search, kind of a competition. So they sent out an RFQ, and we wanted to try for it too, but we're just this little old builder developer in Portland, and they were out on a national search, and ultimately, we had to beg to get our RFQ submitted and accepted, because most people that were skeptical we could pull this off. How much time do we have? Because I'm not keeping track. Am I over already? Because I even got to the weightlifting part. Oh, good. I might need another cup of coffee for that. So we got it submitted. We ended up being one of the top 6, and there were national companies, and all the large home builders at the time here were in the mix, and they narrowed it down to 4, and then they wanted to interview the 4 companies, and they had this jury, a panel of both representatives from the state and the city of Wilsonville, out in the city's offices then, which was in the old firehouse, and it was a half-day interview for each developer. And they were on Monday and Tuesday, and we happened to get 8 o'clock on Monday. We're the first ones out of the box. So we worked for 2 months on putting together a presentation, and we conceived of all of the potential that this site had, and we wanted to make it special, because at the time, and I swear I only have used this word maybe once or twice since I banned it from our verbiage, but it was called the Damish State Hospital, and it had no good connotations. It was a state mental hospital. And so we banned right from the start the use of the D word. And I wanted to come up with something totally new from a marketing standpoint, to change what people would think of this place. And we wanted to separate the whole deal. We didn't even want people to know that this is where it was. So we came up with the notion, when I first went out there and envisioned this, it's fairly flat, but there's a little mound at the top, and we started thinking about new urban development and how, being at the core, it's higher density, and much like European towns. And we traveled around a lot to see how that whole thing kind of worked. And I envisioned it as a sort of a European village, because it's surrounded on 3 sides with the urban growth boundary. So it's kind of a peninsula surrounded by green space, kind of like driving through a European countryside. And as you come closer to it, you'll see a farmhouse here or there, and you get a little bit closer, it gets a little more dense. But then you get down, all of a sudden the streets are really tight, and the houses are close to the street, and balconies looking over. And that was kind of the mentality. So we came up with a name and a theme, and it was going to be French. This Villebois is French for village near the woods. And people say, well, how'd you come up with that name? And I said, well, Ville is, like Wilsonville, and it means village, and Bois is Boise, and I was there, and it means trees, and we made it up. So Villebois, but no one could figure out how to say it or what to pronounce it. Was it Villa Boys or Villi Boyus, or no one got it. So we spent so much time teaching people how to say the word that they forgot about what the other word was. And it was, it ended up being fairly creative. But getting back to the presentation on 8 o'clock on that Monday morning in August, the city had coffee and donuts and thing out in the back of the room. And when we got there, most of the the jury was already in there. And so we asked them all to leave the room. It was a big room, bigger than this. Asked them all to leave the room, which they thought was weird. And we came in with our prepared French press coffee, chocolate croissants with French displays of fruit and all that. And then we had French cafe music playing. We were wearing berets and, French stuff. And and they came back in and they just, they're going, what in the heck's going on? So we made our presentation. It was a PowerPoint. And I made the first presentation of the concept and all that. And then we had prepared a PowerPoint that ran through with the coolest stuff of images of France and the French countryside and villages and architecture and all that. And the voice in the background was of a woman with a French accent. And it was the coolest thing. And when we were done with the presentation, the jury actually stood up and applauded. And I knew the three that came after us were all dead meat at that point. We were, and ultimately, 2 months later, it got down to two, and they selected us, and we moved on as the developer of Villebois. So be creative and pull all your juices together. Pull all of your friends and your co-workers together and think outside the box. And don't be a me too person. Just because the builder across the street just sold a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-story home at 1,850 square feet doesn't mean you should build the same thing across the street. Don't be that way. If you're in the middle, if you're in the bell curve and you think about the bell curve, 67% of the stuff that's built is right there. That's where everybody is. And that's where you fight for margins, because everybody's there. That's where the competition is. If you can be if you can be 1+ standard deviation above the bell curve or 1 standard deviation below in what your product is, whether it's price point or style or design or location, you're going to hit a niche. You're going to be better. So think through that. Be creative. So about 9 years ago, I hurt my shoulder skiing. And it just wasn't healing, so I went to my doctor, and he said, well, you're just getting, he used the O word. I don't use that word anymore. That wasn't Oregon. I don't use the O word anymore, and I told him where he could take his comment. And so he sent me to a physical therapist that was at a gym in downtown Lake Oswego, and I got in the habit of, and I like most guys over, business people over the years, you make a resolution in January to go to the gym, and that lasts about 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks maybe, and then you're back with business and family and all other stuff that takes you away from going to the gym and take care of you. So I'd done that for 35 years, but when I hurt the shoulder, I went in. I got in the habit of going to see the physical therapist 3 days a week. And working my shoulder. When he was done working the shoulder, I'd go downstairs and I started lifting weights. And about 3 months later, the shoulder got better and I was getting stronger. And a number of months later, I was sitting and I was continuing to go to the gym. And I was sitting watching the football games on New Year's Day, and I did a search. I started thinking, I wonder what the bench press record is for Oregon. So I figured it must be by age and weight or something. And so I looked it up and I saw it and I thought, I could do that if I keep training. So the next day, it's January 2nd, I go in to tell one of the trainers there, I said, well, that's my goal for this year is to break the Oregon bench press record. He goes, okay, sure, you can do that. He said, but if you do that, you have to squat and deadlift too, because that's all what powerlifting is. If you're going to get a record in bench press, you got to do the other 3 too. And I go, well, show me what that is. He did. I go, oh man, that's going to be hard. So. Any rate, I did that, and 11 months later, I entered a powerlifting contest down in Sacramento where we were doing a job down there, And I'd never even been to a powerlifting meet, and I went in, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I walked away with 4 California state records, and then I came back 4 months later and broke those, and then came back to Oregon and broke the Oregon bench press record the following year. And I mean, now, 9 years later, I didn't start out to do this, and I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you as we go through this of what you can achieve in your mind, and whatever your mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. Today, I'm the strongest 60-plus-year-old powerlifter in the world. I have every world record, powerlifting world record there is. And it's crazy. It's like, okay. So about 3.5 years ago, my training partner and I, we were actually training in his garage, which was a bonus because we moved out of his basement into his garage. And his wife got tired of all the people coming over there to train. We decided, well, let's see if we could figure out how to, maybe we should just open our own gym and just have a really cool place for us to train. And so I went out and found a spot in Southeast Portland, and we opened up this gym. We figured, even if we had to support it a little bit, it'd be like paying gym dues. We never planned on making any money at it, but I report today we're paying taxes because we've got so many members. But it's one of the things that we say at the gym, this check your ego at the door. I'll tell you, it's so important because so many guys come into the gym new, and they want to show you what they can do. They want to impress you with how much they can do. And we try to tell people, don't do that. Try to see how well you can do, not how much you can do or how fast you can do it, but how well you can learn, how well you can be coached. And it's hard to do that in an environment where people are selling 10 million and you're only selling 1 million, and you want to do so, but you have to learn the basics. If you're going to learn how to sell 10 million, you got to learn the basics. You got to learn how to sell 100,000 first. And the more you learn and the better you become at it, ultimately you'll do that. So don't think you know it all. I referred to something earlier. We always use a third-party market researcher to determine what we should be doing, what we should be building, and what price point, what it should include. A fellow by the name of John Schleimer down in Sacramento, California. And I remember we used him for Renko and almost everything we've ever done. But we had an opportunity to go into a golf course community in Salem, and we had product that we were building in other neighborhoods in Tigard and Sherwood and all that. And I said, well, we're just going to build that product. It's a proven product. We know what we're going to do. We don't need to do any market research. Just go build that. About 18 months later, we limped out of Salem with our tail between our legs because. And everyone told me Salem's different. I go, Salem's not different. Everybody's the same everywhere. Trust me, I know. No, Salem is different. And the buyers are different, and they're looking for different things, and it's a different, a whole different mentality. And because I thought that I knew better, it cost us. And so I vowed I would always try to check my ego at the door and not do that again. We have another thing at the gym. It says, big is not strong. Strong is strong. And you see a lot of people that are big guys, bodybuilders who look very big and have big muscles on, not necessarily strong. And if you apply that to business, you don't have to be really big to be strong. Look at me, I'm not big. But you can be strong in many ways without being a big company. You don't have to be GE. You don't have to be a national home building company to be successful. In fact, many times it's better to be smaller and more nimble and more creative and be able to think outside the box and move the needle faster than a big company can. It's like a big ship. Trying to slow down or turn a big ship, it's very difficult to do. It's on its way. It's got too much momentum. But if you're in a little sailboat, a little dinghy, you can turn on a dime. And you can be strong in many other ways. And I would encourage you to think through that. You don't have to be the biggest on the block. You just need to be the best on the block. So work towards that. Set goals. Yogi Berra said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And it's true. You do need to set goals and achievable goals and believe that you can get there. I set goals in powerlifting. Once I got going, I said, okay, I'm just going to be the best in the world. Modest goal. Ultimately, you know, it happened. I don't know, it happened. But it's set the goals and believe you can get there. Develop a passion around your goal. I mean, whatever you're doing in life, if you're not passionate about it, then give it up. Find something you're excited to get out of bed in the morning, that you're thrilled about. I mean, that's what life's all about. It's just being passionate. And the more passionate you are, the more successful you're going to be. Go ahead and compete against the best. I mean, if you study the best people and the best products and emulate what they do, you're going to be the best. I have the opportunity to work with some of the best powerlifters in the world. My partner was able to lift over 800 pounds at 198 pound body weight. I mean, just an incredible thing. And to watch him and see his technique, and I study these guys. I see what their techniques are. I try to learn from them. I compete against the best, and it makes me the best. Press through the pain. You can see in the picture up there that's a world record squat of 600 and some pounds, and you can see the pain expressed in my face. And I can tell you that I've suffered through a lot of pain over the last 4 years, as many of you have, as the downturn has taken hold around the country. And but we've pressed through it. We've found ways to keep positive. And I can tell you where literally a year ago I was trying to figure out how to raise the money to file Chapter 11, that today I'm finally seeing an opportunity to move things forward and bring on a new equity partner in Villebois. We just built the Piazza at Villebois, which is going to be an award-winning urban park out in the suburbs. You got to press through it. You got to have a low threshold of pain. You got to have let water roll off your back like a duck, and get after it. So just really quickly, winning with people. We had a great group of folks in developing Orenco Station and continue to do so. And I can tell you, that's what it's like to see the smile on those people's faces. That's what it feels like to be the best in the world at something. And we were that night. We just blew everybody away at the Nationals and came away as America's best master plan community. Be remarkable. Again, find things that are absolutely remarkable. Villebois is becoming a remarkable place. If you haven't been there lately and seen it, it's just an incredible place. And the homes aren't $1 million. I mean, you can still buy a home in the mid $200,000 and soon under $200,000. So be remarkable. Act on your passion. I mean, we 3 years ago, we were passionate about powerlifting. We just said, well, let's open up our own gym. Okay, that's nothing, no big deal. We did it, we acted on it, and we're having fun. We've created a great environment, and it's working. Again, Villebois, a decade later, and we compete against the best, with the best, and now America's best master plan community in 2009. There's the Piazza that we just complete with new bocce ball courts. I can tell you that a lot of people, I've had meetings that have ended at 10 or 11 o'clock at night before, but I've never had one that has started at 10 o'clock at night. We had to meet the electricians to test out our lighting there. We had to wait for it to get dark about 3 weeks ago, so it was a late night meeting. Again, there's our illustrious vice president at our grand opening in Orenco Station, and I can just tell you that imagine what you can do. Just imagine what you can be, and don't give up your daydream. Okay?